welcome everyone to this newest episode of Chemistry with Kristen. If you're not familiar with this new branch off of the Real Deal Media and Real Deal Report, I am going to be doing some intimate interviews with some people that you may or may not know. And it's not always going to be science-based. It's more just a more intimate setting where I talk one-on-one with some people I may have never met or some people I've known for a while. So tonight, as I aforementioned, Sean Stone, how are you doing this evening?
Can't complain here, it's interesting how quickly the winter comes. It feels like this whole daylight savings thing is so unnecessary, doesn't it? Like, we already are losing sunlight. Why do we have to make it disappear even earlier? I don't understand why we preserve this daylight savings tradition.
Well, I used to live in Chicago, as you know, and I'm in Michigan now, so we're Eastern and Chicago is Central. And I always thought it was so depressing when it was so dark at like 4:15. I was like driving home from work. And, when you get home from work, you're just like ready to, hang out with friends or family. And it's like, you're just ready to put on those PJs. So yeah, I believe the history of it is kind of debated and it's a little bit pointless. I don't know why we still have it, but you and I have known each other for a few years. I don't know, 6 or 7 years. But one thing about you that a lot of people who aren't familiar with this aspect of you, even though you're very vocal about it on your platforms, is the whole spiritual side of you. Now, you and I can get into in-depth conversations about politics or chaos around the world, but it's like you always bring in, I've made a joke with about you, Sean, through the years, that when we have conversations, I kind of feel like I'm on a mushroom because you're able to invoke people's autonomous thought to where they can tap into different aspects of their brain to kind of view different spiritual angles of things that we talk about every day. And I really wanted to gain some insight from you of what you think is actually going on. What is the bigger picture here spiritually? And when you're really throwing in all aspects of our entire being and our entire world, what do you think is the bigger picture going on here between everything going on with the political aspects of the election fraud, a whole worldwide shutdown of COVID? Could you share with me how you are kind of viewing this from, a spiritual angle? Like, how do you think this ties in?
People are oftentimes manipulated to misunderstand spirituality.
With closed eyes, allow yourself to rest comfortably into your breathing.
Spirituality is all that gives existence. All that gives life to this world is spirit. We are oftentimes manipulated by an atheistic, materialistic worldview that has become prominent since the Enlightenment, and especially now propagated and promulgated in this scientific worldview that detaches the human from the spirit, which is to say our souls. And the awakening, the Great Awakening, so-called, that is ongoing and has been felt and experienced by many of us before this year began, is about awakening to your inner truth, your inner knowing, that which cannot be taken from you. And it is your God-given right to own. It is equal. Your truth is equal to anyone else's truth on this planet. That God-given right is infringed upon by many people that try to project their truths upon you. And we all have the right to share our truths, but we don't have the right to manipulate others into denying their own truth. And unfortunately, since childhood, the predation upon the child on this planet is so tremendous that it doesn't even, the issue of sex trafficking, pedophilia, which has become very hot topic for people within, the, let's say, awakening communities, right? Those that are horrified by this. It's only the tip of the iceberg as an expression of the abuse of children that is ongoing by a culture and a society that believes that children do not have their own innate sense of truth as a sovereign being, which isn't to say that children can't be educated. But why do we impose faulty beliefs and faulty structures on children and adapt them to ways of life that may be untrue to their nature?
Well, I was thinking about Santa.
What do you think of when you think of Santa?
Well, I mean, I grew up with the whole Hallmark aspect of Christmas, and of course, I was raised to believe in Santa. I early on figured out the truth of it, but for me, I viewed it as it was just kind of a being part of almost like a show. Like if you play your part, then it's just fun. It's almost like role playing. But then I had friends and family who were believing this stuff until they were like 11 and 12. And it led to, like, we know about cognitive dissonance, and it's kind of silly to tie that into believing in Santa, but it really did kind of shake what they thought. And I have had friends who've actually told me they believed in it for so long that when they looked back at their past memories of Christmas, they kind of felt like when you find almost similar, this is a horrible example, but when you find out, like, say your spouse has cheated or something, it makes you question everything. Like, what was the legitimacy of this or that? Or, so I know that's sounds kind of silly to some people. But that's the first thing I thought of when you said that is there's so much that we get our children to believe. And sadly, a lot of it is aligned with getting them to fall in line with rules. And we're
Yes.
forgetting that child minds, we can look at a child, like my youngest daughter just turned 5 the other day. And I also have a 16-year-old. And I have to remind my 16-year-old that your sister's brain is not fully developed to understand certain social aspects of life to where this may be viewed as rude or this could be mean. And that you have to teach her and mold her to understand the consequences of certain actions or words. And I don't lie to my child about Santa. I don't really even talk about it. It's just really on TV. But I don't say, be good or Santa's watching. We just don't do that. And it's not for any real reason other than I just kind of live like fly by the seat of my pants. I don't want my child to believe in something to where it's earth shattering to them when they figure it out through me or through school.
So here's the beautiful thing. I'm glad you brought up Santa. Santa is real. We have so many Santas in our life. If we understand the lesson, the message, the truth, that is the blessing that is life, right? Mm-hmm. How many people have been Santas in our reality? How many people have given us and rewarded us and brought little gifts into our reality and blessings, again, blessings, saying thank you. That spirit is everywhere because that is nature. That is the sun. It gives us life. Okay, it does not ask and get permission. It does not say, give me something in return. But then who manipulates it? Who then turns it into a cult? And think about Santa as one expression. Just as in the past, there were those that said, give your offering to the sun with the cult of blood sacrifice. Many cultures did this, right? They would then cut off heads and hearts and say, this is the blood offering we give back to the sun. We give back to this deity in exchange to say thank you. Because now they've created a cult to manipulate the human and to control the human. Now let's look at the modern cult of COVID. You mentioned Santa. You talk about pretend. We live in a world where we're playing make-believe, where if I have my mask on and I take it off to eat the food, we're all pretending that my mask is still on. We're pretending that the mask never came off. So I'm eating the food and I have the mask off. So as soon as that food is stopped eating and I stopped drinking, I'm supposed to put the mask back on and pretend I never took it off, because we're playing pretend here. We're not playing with sovereign human. Again, children's minds, yes, they are not fully developed. Guess what? Human minds are never fully developed because we have the ability to, what do they call it? A plasticity, right? Neuroplasticity. Our mind is constantly, hopefully evolving, many times devolving when we stop educating ourselves, we stop taking on alternative points of view and stop listening and stop hearing. Then we start to shrivel up and decay. But as far as human growth is concerned, we're actually oftentimes, many of us, at this moment, this juncture in time, are not expanding our awareness, expanding into more fullness and saying, wait a minute, we have for hundreds of thousands of years evolved and immune systems that include inverse of the bacteria and viruses that exist within me right now. And that's part of what constitutes me. And so I need to, as a flowing river of life, keep adapting, bringing in new germs by interacting with people and sharing oxygen, sharing space, touch, feeling, all these exchanges with other humans, right? That's been
It
going
is
on for
so
hundreds of
important,
thousands of
yes.
years of evolution. Yeah. And now we're supposed to shut all that off and isolate, which is actually putting ourselves into unhealthier patterns, right? Because that's not how you evolve. That's not how you adapt. That's not how when you lack exchange, you don't evolve, right? You don't grow.
Mm-hmm.
So what they're trying to do is to put us into this make-believe Santa world where this little germ virus, whatever you want to call this COVID virus, is supposed to magically infect you if you take that mask off. And so we don't know where it is. And if you're naughty and you take off that mask, it's going to come for you. That's again, playing upon these principles that were meant to misinform children since they were young with the spirit, not this true spirit of Santa, which is no, life is about giving. Life is giving. We're exchanging oxygen. We're giving oxygen back to the world every moment. We inhale, we give it back. Life is giving. Life is bounty. Nature gives us oxygen. It gives us plants and foods and fruits and animals. And all life is giving. And they're trying to negate that with the spirit of death and the spirit of stagnation. And to me, the pinnacle of that is the mask, is the symbol of death. It is literally the symbol of cutting off your oxygen levels over hours at a time. How much does that deplete your oxygen in your body? How much is that actually dumbing you down as you go over
20%.
time? How many kids are being potentially abused long term by these effects of deprivation of oxygen, deprivation of socialization, movement, activity, touch, feeling, friendship, things like this, real things. That's life.
You kind of just honed into something, and I'm going to kind of take a little turn here. It's kind of a little dark, but when you talk about the mask representing death, and we know that fear controls people. And what I have seen throughout this whole experience of COVID and pushing the masks and pushing them upon children is that statistically, children who are trafficked or molested or raped, it usually occurs from someone that is of authority and that they have trust in. And when you are seeing people, and I'm not trying to disrespect at all, please let me clarify, I'm not disrespecting teachers. I understand how schools are being strong-armed into forcing these mask mandates. But see, when we know that something is wrong, I'm highly credentialed in how masks work and don't work. When you are telling the youth of our world that they must wear this apparatus on their face or they're going to kill grandma or could harm other people, we are teaching our children. It's a sense of grooming. Do you see where I'm going here? It's a sense of grooming these children to think, if you do not do what we say, even though this isn't right, just you alone, you could be the person that harms others. And that's the type of psyche that pushes children to start to do things that they know is unnatural, that they know is wrong, because they are shamed and they have fear pushed upon them to comply or die.
Correct. It's a program, right? And who are the greatest propagandists for programs? It's the media, right? Because science is not a consensus. Science, if it mirrors life, should ever be adapting, should ever be inquiring, should ever be deepening. And again, to go back to the previous issue, when you take spirit out of science or politics or television, and you start to pretend, again, you make believe that spirit is detached from it. Now you can go into inversions, and now it becomes black is white, up is down, left is right. At a deeper level of understanding, yes, all that is true, because there is paradox. And if you really understand truth, you have to see it from all perspectives. But when they actually invert things and do not allow you to see the antithesis and to tell you that up is down and you can't look in the other direction without being censored. Take, for example, the most recent study that came out from Johns Hopkins. The researcher at Johns Hopkins went into how there have been more deaths in 2020 in America. There have not been more deaths in 2020 in America than in previous years. Okay, there have not. COVID has not created a pandemic amount of deaths. In fact, there was a decrease in things like heart disease deaths, related deaths, right? And so she goes, well, why are there, or Breon, I'm not sure if it's a man or woman. Breon was the researcher. I'm not sure if this is like, why is this a decrease in heart-related deaths? Well, because those are now being counted as COVID, right? What used to be heart disease now is counted as COVID.
Yes.
So that's why there's no increase in deaths. So after this paper was released, the researcher was then harassed and given endless numbers of harassment saying, well, now people are not going to wear the mask. They're not going to do what they're told. They're not going to obey. Truth is dangerous. Don't tell them the truth because they might think for themselves. Get back to the issue I said at the beginning. Truth is yours and no one can take it from you. Your truth is no less than my truth. The trouble is when certain beings start to manipulate others, believing that their truth is more important than your truth. Everyone has the right to disseminate our truth. But when we start to manipulate others in their sovereignty to say, wait, I choose my truth, my reality, and my sovereignty over my being, right? Mm-hmm. And you start to restrict and manipulate that, you are forging a way into the death of the spiritual being. This is why the end goal of that reality, what we can call a satanic inversion of nature, of life, of truth, to invert it, the only way to succeed in inverting God's universe is to take you out of God's universe. And God's universe, I say natural law. What's the first principle of natural law? As Clarence Thomas says, it's the Declaration of Independence. All men and women as an expression of mankind, created equal, right? With the God-given inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Mm-hmm. If you want to deny those natural laws and say we don't have the right to our liberty, we have to be told what to wear on our face. We can't trust our immune system. We have to get a vaccination. We cannot think for ourselves. The next step is that you have to be under the control of an artificial intelligence. That is the only, or I should say, you will become part of that hive mind. You will basically become merged with that hive mind. That is the only that is the ultimate consequence and conclusion for that philosophy, because your philosophy is not rooted in natural law, in God's law, and the spirit, again, the spirit of life, which is giving life, transformative, and with life comes death. But if you want to now say, well, we want to run from death, which is part of the transhumanist philosophy, is we don't want to die. We want to take our mind and merge it with the machine, so we can avoid death. Well, in order to avoid death, you also have to avoid life. And that's what they're actually getting at. People don't see it deeper. They're saying, well, I can just avoid death by putting the mask on, taking the vaccine, and then I won't get the COVID, so I won't die. COVID is just a symbol for death. Death is real. It's a part of us. Every moment, cells are dying. We are choosing between life and death. Every moment of our life, we make decisions, we make choices that can kill us. What we ingest into our body, the food, the air.
I think what you're saying, and I think you make a great point, is that we have a society now where people are trying to prolong their life. And there's a difference between trying to prolong life and also enjoy the life that you have and live in the moment through your spirit, through your happiness, through your heart and your faith, instead of planning for your death and constantly fearing your death. And what I think COVID has done to the entire world, and I think that's why we see kind of people losing it, is that people are now more than ever forced to face their own immortality, their own potential likelihood of dying, even though we know the recovery rates are greater than 94% for all age ranges. But I think that's just why you see so many people just kind of forgetting everything you're saying, that you just have to have faith in your spirit. You have to live in the now and just, I always use the analogy of Stockholm syndrome, because people are not fully living their lives. They're living in this fear that is pushed out through the government and pushed out through big pharma and huge corporations. And it's a worldwide initiative. And if they don't have that fear over you, they can't control you. And I think that's why so many people are lashing out, especially on Twitter. When you were describing what you're describing, I just kind of saw my Twitter feed. People don't want to understand that, like you said, everyone has their own truth. It is not up to you or I to tell people that their truth is not real. And I think there's a difference between disagreeing with somebody compared to telling someone you're wrong, that didn't happen. That happens to me all the time. Being a whistleblower and knowing things that I know, And my truth is definitely my truth. So thank you for kind of reminding me of that, because I'm a strong person, but it's easy to have my spirit knocked down by people who just want to push negativity and push me into fear so they can control me, which won't happen. But my question to you is, what is it that you recommend to turn what is happening into a positive? Like, what can we do now, especially now when we talked about the whole, holiday season? What can we do to kind of push people into the mindset of regaining that control of their own destiny, of their journey, and not letting people in suits or corporations or whatever else controlling our own identities and our own paths?
Earth was never meant to be an easy place. Some people have called it a prison planet. Some have called it a school. And school was never easy, right? Even for the smartest kids, because
Right.
you can be smart and you can be socially awkward. You can be socially acceptable, but you can be very limited in other, in your mental capacities or in your facility to engage in other things, right? Everyone has their strengths in school. Some are very good in history and terrible at math. Others are good at science and right? I mean, it's not easy. It's meant to be a challenge. We have to remember that this is not the be all end all. This is why spirituality is so important, because it's a reminder that we are spiritual beings going through this by our own volition and choice to ultimately stand in our sovereignty. But that is a path to achieve, because we humans have been manipulated at so many levels for so many thousands of years. You talk about Stockholm syndrome. It's very real. It's very true. It begins even with your own parents. You talk about the abuse of children. Yes, as I said before, the abuse of children is not just the worst case scenarios of trafficking and pedophilia. It's the verbal abuse of basically being told that their truth is not true,
Right.
or their perspective is not valued, right? Physical abuse doesn't even have to be. Abuse is a heavy word for people. Mm-hmm. But once the child, unable to defend itself, does not feel that it has the right and the ability to express him or herself and her feelings, right, begins to shut down, begins to conform, begins to play the game, pretend, make believe. Now we are in a world of people that are traumatized, playing out their make-believe reality in a way that is untrue, and as a result creates toxic sludge and swamps and fear-based societies of people walking around zombified, waiting to be told where to go, waiting to be told when they can take their mask off, waiting to be told when it's safe, when it's code purple as opposed to code pink, when it's code orange for terror as opposed to code red. All these games by those that understand psychologically, spiritually, psychospiritually, the war that's perpetrated against humans, because humans have yet to say, I've had enough. Right. I've had enough. And when you say enough and you start to tune out what the orders are and what the television says and what your so-called inner boss, whatever that super ego may be, telling you how to think, how to behave, what to do, where to go, you start to shift out of that frequency. You start to remember that you are a reflection of the divine. You have that divine spark within you. You are a reflection of God, creator, source. I don't care what you want to call. It's not man or woman. It's not some guy with a beard sitting on a throne. No, it's you. Look in the mirror. Now, start to connect to that. Start to own that which is you, which is eternal, which does not die, which has no fear of death or viruses or this. Because if you're going to die, it is because your soul is calling you physically out of this form. And it will come whether it's in the form of a heart attack or a coconut landing on your head. Because it's not over. It's simply you shifting when you're meant to shift out of this reality, and this reality is meant to challenge you. It's a challenge for every one of us going through it. We are going through a challenge. And it's deepening because God only gives us that which we can handle. If we can't handle this shift in frequency, which is to stand to our sovereignty, many people will be checking out. Many people will say, well, I want to become an AI. I want to basically merge with the hive and not have to think for myself. I don't have to make decisions for myself. I'm checking out. Or they'll be sick, or it'll be earth changes, or whatever you want to call it. Because right now there's so much manipulation of the human psyche to play upon
Absolutely.
guilt and trauma and other things that the abusers know that the abused can, the victim you can play with, right? You deserve this. You see, humans, you deserve this. You screwed up the planet. You deserve everything that's coming to you. You see, you've destroyed the earth. Now somebody ate a bat and it turned into a virus, and all of you are getting sick and dying. You see all these games that they play to make you feel like first like a victim, and then to accuse you of actually destroying yourself, because you're not standing in your sovereignty, and you're not standing and saying, wait a minute, I'm not a victim or a victimizer. I'm here by grace of creation. I'm here in the flow of creation. There is both positive and negative in creation. There's both good and bad in creation. It's not my fault, but I take ownership and responsibility for what I can affect. And increasingly, I wish to be more responsible for myself, for my soul. I wish to be more conscious, to expand my awareness, and to become more humble in the process. Because as you become greater and more connected to spirit, to whole creation, become more humble and realizing, my God, how infinite and vast this creation is, how wondrous this thing is. I can't even stare at the sun for more than a minute. I can't stare right into the sun, right? How can I even imagine the face of creation?
I sneeze.
So, right, it's so powerful. I'm just saying, so you can't see the whole world. So we don't have that knowledge. We don't have that awareness. So let's stand in the humility of how powerful and infinite creation is and say, wow, this is a wonder, and it has been given to us as a blessing. Let's accept this challenge and use it, because God gives us nothing that we cannot handle, to deepen and become more powerful in ourselves, in our souls, not in our ego, in our soul's power and strength. Because lighting up is that diamond within us that is so stressed and pressured by darkness and that manipulation and control, trying to control us. And all of a sudden we say, enough is enough. You've hardened me, and my star is born.
And I know that we're dealing with worldwide differences in faith and religion. And regardless of what people don't believe or do believe, I've always tried to tell people, at least believe in the energies around us. We have energy. And what you're saying, all the negativity, all the negative aspects of control. And I think we have a problem with people not realizing how important they are. People think you need money or you need to be a celebrity or famous to be able to make any sort of change. And to make change doesn't mean that you have to do it on a large scale. You can change yourself. You can change someone else's life by just a random act of kindness, like you said, acting as a Santa, giving. And I think that we need to recognize that the negative energy around us, whether it's a devil or it's demonic or it's just a government entity that is oppressing us, you have to view that invisible character as kind of a narcissist. And you're in an abusive behavior, like you said, with that narcissist, because they will make you think. It's like me, like I don't wear a mask. I can't wear a mask. And I also have 18 years experience in understanding masks. So I absolutely would not wear one. But what's happening with all the negativity and that narcissistic societal behavior is to make me start to think, am I selfish? Maybe I'm wrong. Even though I'm an expert in this field, am I wrong? But I know I'm not wrong. And I see myself kind of getting beat down sometimes, and something will happen where one person will tell me, thank you for helping me get my mask exemption. And I know this is a silly analogy, but we have people who are suicidal, people that are so afraid of being able to speak their truth and say no to certain things because they're so afraid of being viewed as that one bad apple. And that is such a large amount of control. And that's why I think people really need to view their opposition that's negative in a controlling aspect as just a narcissistic partner. And you need to break those toxic relationships and take control of your own narrative, because that's the problem here. People do not have control of their own narrative. They're being controlled. And if you don't fall in line, you are crazy and you are evil. And you should pack up and go to Somalia or wherever else they tell you to go. I was told the other day, they hope I don't have kids. Well, newsflash, I have two. So
it's just, it's funny how the liberals of the 90s were the ones that were saying, fuck you, don't tell me what to do, right? And
Yeah,
now they've become, fuck you, do what they say, or do what I say. Little tin pot dictators all over the place. They're showing
exactly.
themselves
Yeah.
because it's a lack of, when you don't feel safe and secure, you overcompensate, right? Who are the great egoic characters are generally the most insecure, right? They're insecure inside, so they project it out, right? It's always this. It's always the one that overcompensate. You know, the old thing about the guy with the fast car, and they always call it penis, but it's not about penis. It's an overall insecurity, right? I have to
Yes.
project my power, so I feel safe.
Big
I feel
trust.
unsafe. I feel unwell. I know that I'm toxic. My body, for these people, I don't believe this. My gnosis is I'm healthy. I'm living. I'm love. I interact with anything in this world, and I know that I will survive until my soul tells me that it's time to not be here anymore. And until then, I'm living.
Well, I think that's
I
great.
trust in my truth. But there are many people that are running around, as we're saying, that are basically wearing masks, but they're already sick because their bodies are swamps. Their guts are swamps. They actually haven't cleaned out anything in their diet, in their practices, in their daily practices, in their spiritual practices, in their living practices. So they're basically swamps infested, and then they're breathing their bacteria into their masks, and then they're worried about getting sick, but they're already sick. It just
Well,
hasn't expressed itself yet, because the expression of sickness is not where it begins. It doesn't begin with a virus. The virus is only attracted to what? Viruses and bacteria are attracted to that which is rotten, right? That which is decaying, that which
perfect
is,
environment to
right,
foster that.
infected. The infection is really just showing that there's a wound. If you have a wound inside of you, then the bacteria and the viruses will fester, and then you'll say, oh, well, that they caused it. No, they didn't cause it. Your system, it has issues. Look at your system. This is an opportunity to know our own systems better, to know our own bodies better, to know what makes us healthy, to makes us feel good. If we use this practice of lockdown, by the way, which is very powerful spiritually, only for 40 days. You shouldn't be going quarantining for years on end like they're trying to do. 40 days of quarantine is a very powerful practice, because all the, 40 days in the desert, the number 40 years is a different connotation, but the idea of the 40 quarantine comes from 40 days, quarantina. So the idea of 40 is very powerful, to go inside and to say, well, what are the practices, the habits that I want to break? What is my spiritual orientation? What am I eating? And so when you actually do the proper quarantine, you see this is an opportunity for us to heal and to become more sovereign over ourselves and our health. Unfortunately, many people have missed it. And that's why they keep extending it longer and longer and longer and longer. And this endless saga of, even after the vaccination comes, then the masks still remain, the social distancing remains, and essentially the fear-based mind control remains forever, according to that psychology. Because, hey, Australia's cut COVID out by being quarantined, so they should just stay in quarantine forever by that psychology. That's not health. Maybe you can quarantine yourself from a virus, but guess what? You already have them inside of you. And guess what? It's your system that's breaking down in the process of psychological stress, distress, emotional distress, nourishment habits. Again, everything, water, air, all these things. That's what makes a living being, not a virus.
Right. And well, we're winding up on time here, Sean. So I just want to tell you, I'm so glad that you sat down with me tonight on this episode. And I just want to kind of close it out and just say, we're similar in age. And I know you've probably heard the term of don't surround yourself with toxic people, be around people who push you to be better. And that's what we have around us is no one has told us, clean up your diet, eat right, build up immune function. Instead, it's do this, comply or die. And that's not the mindset that we need. People exercising. I don't think that that's good for mental health. And you have to recognize that whether it's a family member or it's the government or it's your doctor, you can recognize through your own thought whether or not somebody is good for you. Now, somebody telling you what you need to hear, not you want to hear, is not what I'm talking about. Sometimes your doctor's going to say, lose weight. But if your doctor or the media outlet that you watch throughout this whole COVID breakout has not said to you one time, increase your vitamin D, increase your vitamin A, hydrate, work out, These are home workout tips to help build your overall spiritual well-being and your gut health. Nobody is saying this. And that should be our first flag to realize that these people that are shutting us down, these people that are imposing the fear, are not doing it to help us. And once you realize that, you get the control back.
And they're in violation of all these things, ironically, whether it's Chris Cuomo or what's his name, Gruesome over here, or Pelosi, not Nazi Pelosi. I mean, they're all in violation of their own things. It just shows, the hypocrites in the last days and times, the hypocrites have shown themselves. It's up to us to now stand and say, I'm not going to play pretend anymore. Mm-hmm. You've lied to me and lied to me and lied to me. We're not going to pretend that even though I know you were lying, that it's all okay. The Bidens of the world, whose long history in government as a perpetrator of omnibus crime bills and wars against Milosevic and Saddam Hussein and, destructions of Libya and all these things all through his tenure. We're not going to, and the Patriot Act as well. We're not going to pretend like you're not part of this. We're not going to pretend like, you didn't have that history and all of a sudden just say, well, it's okay now. We're just going to unite. No. We unite with those truth seekers that have the light inside of them. I unite with them. If you're part of my tribe, we love the truth. We're here to serve the light. We know this is a spiritual war. And you know it. Every one of you that's a living being knows it in your gut, in your soul, in your heart. When you quiet your mind from all the noise, you know you're here by the grace of something more powerful than the media can spell out for you. When you get in touch with that, get in touch with us.
Yes. And thank you once again, Sean, for joining me this evening. And you can catch myself, Sean, and Dean Ryan, and we're adding to our crew here at RealDealMedia.com. You can catch us on the Real Deal Report. We're spreading truth and we're sharing new angles, and with that comes censorship. So this week you're going to be able to catch the Real Deal Report on both my channel, Kristen Meghan TV, and Sean's channel. Sean, what is your YouTube channel's name?
Sean Stone on YouTube.
There you go.
And I'm also on MeWe now. MeWe, Parlor. I'm trying to branch out because I don't think Facebook.
Yeah, I just joined those
other
also.
Guys, right? Google owns YouTube. I don't think there's a long life for a lot of these companies. I think that we're realizing who really owns them, who really controls them, and they're not here to give the freedom of expression and thought that they pretend to have initially been here for.
Well, I'm sure on the Real Deal Report, we will definitely be talking about the breaking news about censorship and Trump's threatening to remove the 230 protection. So if you'd like to hear more information, please follow us again, the Real Deal Report through RealDealMedia.com. We'll be premiering this week on Kristen Meghan TV and Sean Stone's YouTube channel. To search his name and you will find it. Also, Sean has a new documentary out called 1,000 Pieces. Is that correct? 1,000 Pieces. I've seen the trailer. I'm really excited to watch it. I plan on watching it tomorrow. And I already saw the trailer and recognized, I kind of felt honored that I've actually met several people that are in that documentary. So keep up the good work, Sean. I'll see you this week, and stay healthy and stay happy.
Always. We bring health, we bring life, we bring love, and everything will follow.
Yes.
Filmmaker.